Hello. Okay, so I wanted to make a video. I'm not sure if I'm actually going to post this or not, but I just needed to talk about the Amazing Digital Circus because I can't stop thinking about it, and I just need to get all of the things that I noticed about the episode off my chest before I go insane, because the theories that I have are in fact insane, just like how I feel watching the episode. So, um now just a note that um, I do think that some of the things that I'm going to talk about, there's a chance that I may or may not be reading into it a little bit too much. However, I think I'm having fun doing it, and I do think that this series has a lot of thought put into it. So, um, I don't know. I just want to talk about it, and you can say if I'm crazy or not. Your thoughts on what I think. Maybe I do have something, maybe I don't. It doesn't really matter. I'm just having fun talking about what I think about this the episode. Um there was one other thing. What was I going to say? Oh, right. Yeah, no, this is going to be at like um not a slow descent into insanity. I'm just going to jump right off into the deep end. It's going to start off fine, but then I'm going to get into like colors. I'm gonna get into like the meanings of like what the colors mean and shit. And I think everyone's gonna look at me like, what are you talking about? So okay, let me start. So the first thing that I want to mention about the episode, the first thing I want to talk about is this note. Um, I just want to talk about this note because there's a couple of things, right? One, the bee is on it, which I will get into right after I finish my first monologue about this note. The second thing is the little Cain and Abel logo on top, and that'll be another thing. So the first thing that I want to mention is that people are saying that this note is a reference to the joke that, if, your dad goes to the store to get milk and they never come back. And so this kind of shows an awareness in Cain that he's not going to be here today, right? Um and he's kind of like abandoning them. Obviously, that part's obvious. What I want to talk about is the Cain and Abel logo, because the way I see it, there's two possibilities. Either one, Cain knew exactly what he was doing for this adventure, and he knew that everything was going to happen. He knew that he was going to have the NPC come out and talk to them and everything like that. And number two is that he didn't know that this was going to happen, and he made it into a joke later on in the episode somehow. Like maybe he just figured it out while they were leaving or something. I do think that there is the possibility that while he did make this as an adventure, there is a lot of truth to what he is saying. So, like, maybe there is some sort of like, maybe the administrator room, for example, was real, but maybe it's somewhere else. Maybe it's located somewhere else in the circus and they don't know where it is. Something like that. But either way, those are the two possibilities I see. And I think that the Cain and Abel logo being on top of this note is a clear indication that Cain already knew what was going to happen before anything happened. Um, the other thing is the little bee logo, and I'm going to fast forward real quick until later on in the episode just to show you guys what I'm seeing. So if we go over to this note, this like blueprint that our NPC Abel has for us, at one of these shots, I'm not sure where it is. I'll keep going. Okay, you see over here, there's a little bee. My friend pointed this out, that Cain really likes drawing bees on everything, and this may be a hint that Cain is the one who drew this. I feel like in the context of the episode that Abel is kind of saying that he drew everything, that he made all this up. So it wouldn't make sense for Cain to have gotten a hold of this paper. There may be some other like hidden meaning behind the B being scratched out. Maybe like Cain had this paper beforehand, but then like just kind of threw it away, and Abel was the one who scratched out the B. It could be that maybe, I don't know, honestly. Leave your thoughts down below. Leave your thoughts down below. I don't know what else it could mean. However, I do think that the B being there is a symbol that this was created by Cain. That like this Cain had his hands on this, that it wasn't something that was drawn by a human. I think that the NPC we see seems too important and has been put in too many episodes to just be like an NPC. You know what I mean? Like the NPC has been hiding around the corner in all these different episodes, and it has been threaded into the story like for too long for me to think that that this is the last thing that we're going to see of him, and two, that he's not an important character and that he was just an NPC that got erased at the end. I think that I'm not sure exactly what the NPC is going to be used for, to be honest. However, I do think I'm just waiting for the ball to drop. I'm just waiting for the other half to drop. He may kind of resemble another person, another human who used to live in the circus, that has since abstracted, but who knows. The other thing that I want to talk about now is, just quickly, I want to talk about the Chinese room. Now, in regards to the symbols that Cain shows from the Chinese room, so if you translate this one, it means egg, which is interesting because, or at least that's what Google Translate tells me. If you Google Translate it, I don't speak Chinese, so I could be like completely wrong. Maybe it's like a weird like translation error. But from what I've Google Translated, it says egg, which is interesting in the context of the story because Jax was just mentioning eggs in episode 6, in this episode, right, where he is arguing with Pomni, right? So that's one thing. Now the response is also another thing that gets me. What he says to Zubul right here, you're only making the joke take longer. First of all, that is the line that we got when someone asked, like, can you give us a line from episode 7? And this is the line that we got. You're only making the joke take longer, which is interesting because a lot of people were saying that it was going to come from like a conversation that somebody has with like Kaufmo, for example, because because one of the only things that we know about him is that he does make jokes like that. I don't know. Which I also thought it was going to be like from some sort of backstory scene, which is another thing that I feel like a lot of people thought that there was going to be some sort of backstory scene in this episode, but there ended up not being really any backstory at all, or flashbacks rather. There was backstory, I guess, technically, but like flashbacks is what people expected, and it wasn't there. Now, that's separate. Sorry, I'm just going off on a tangent. But this, and then this with the context of what the joke is, because the response that Cain gets back here, if you Google Translate it, again, it may be wrong, but if you Google Translate it, it says pain. That's what the character means. And so I find it really interesting that Cain's response is laughing maniacally at the word pain. The creator of the Amazing Digital Circus has said that this was based off of I have no mouth, but I must scream, right? I have no mouth, I must scream, whatever. And in that story, the main character, or sorry, not the main character, but the AI is called Am, and I'll just refer to him as Am while I'm explaining this. But I've never read the story, so please take this with a grain of salt. I don't know all the ins and outs of this story. I haven't done any deep dives into it. I only know what other people have said in YouTube videos and all that kind of stuff. So please don't like crucify me if I am wrong about this. But from what I understand, Am is a character that tortures and inflicts pain on the humans that he knows or that he has as prisoner, because he that's the only way he knows how to interact with humans, right? He is an AI that was created for the purpose of killing people, inflicting pain on people. So he that's like kind of all he knows. And I think it's interesting here that Kane, the AI who is kind of parallels Am in some ways, not like exactly, but he's an AI, Am is an AI, right? And so he sees this word pain and he laughs at it, and it's a completely different response to how someone else, like an actual human, may react to the word pain. You know, if I saw pain written on a paper, I wouldn't laugh maniacally at it, I guess. Let me know your thoughts, but I personally would not laugh maniacally if I saw the word pain written down on a paper. I don't think that's funny. Another thing is that throughout the story, there's a theme of pain being made into the butt of a joke, right? And that's like literally what he's doing here too, but like in a broader sense. For example, when in the fast food episode, when they are doing their fast food adventure, Jax throws Ragatha into the deep fryer, which is a funny bit. However, these characters, do we know if they feel pain when something like this happens? We know that they feel emotional pain, obviously, but has it been said if they feel like actual pain? Pomni tells us when she's holding her breath in episode 3 that she holds her breath and she feels like she's gonna die. So she isn't comfortable like holding her breath for long periods of time. I'm not sure if it may be that like she feels like she's gonna die, but she doesn't really feel pain in a sense. But if the characters do feel pain, this is really painful. I personally have never worked with a deep fryer, but I have heard people talk about it, and that hurts. It's not good. That's very painful. This joke, this joke, if made with the context that the characters do feel pain, is very upsetting. I'll just say that. And it's supposed to be made into the butt of a joke, right? And so the fact that in episode 7, it's kind of like stripped like down to bare bones, where Kane sees the word pain and just starts laughing, right? So that's another thing. Okay, that's my whole rant on that. Okay, I know maybe everything is like, maybe all of this is kind of just stupid. I'm just rambling about the episode, but let's do Jax's abstraction first. We're gonna get into colors afterwards, because that is going to be a long conversation, and I have all the tabs open. I have all the tabs pulled up of all the different episodes of the Amazing Digital Circus, and I'm going to be so honest, I have them all pulled up because of my last point. So let's talk about Jax's abstraction first, and this is probably going to be a little bit shorter. There's just some things that I want to point out. I'm going to be talking more about this part where he's talking about all the like different things over here. I'm gonna be talking about this later because there's some things that I want to talk about that. I'm gonna go, oh wait, sorry, that's that's back over here. Okay, let's talk about Jax's abstraction. So one thing that I want to talk about first is that when Jax turns over to look at all the pictures, these kind of look like his eyes in the scene, because right now his eyes aren't yellow like they usually are. The whites of the backs of his eyes are white. And so when he turns and looks at all the pictures, it kind of looks like these are his eyes, which I think is interesting. Now he takes one picture, he turns it around. There is a dice in the background over there that is stuck on 3, which I think is interesting, because I think that the imagery of, I don't know if you remember during the intermission, this might be nothing, honestly, but we're talking about a bunch of unhinged stuff, so I feel like, you can't really get more than that, right? Here, perfect. This 2 eyes and 1 bubble makes 3. Okay. I probably sound so crazy, but 2 eyes and 1 bubble makes 3, and that turns into 1. Okay, hear me out. There is a theme of 3s. I'm going to get into that when I go into color later on. But okay, we can't talk about that right now. I'm going to be talking about the number 3 in the thing later on, in my rant. But for right now, I just noticed that in the background. I just wanted to point it out. But okay, see, also 3. Do you see what I mean? Pomni has 3 pom-poms on her thing. Kaufmo has 3 over here, I think. But anyway, moving on. So he is looking at a hole. Now, not really sure what the hole means. However, maybe, perhaps, it's worth pointing out that I think this is just in reference to abstraction. I think that the holes are just in reference to, like, kind of trying to reference abstraction. But so he looks at the hole, and I think that's supposed to kind of reference abstraction, right? Because he sees it and he starts looking like this, okay? And then this scene is so good, but it looks like Ribbit's hands are like crawling out, and they go to touch him. And I do think it's interesting that in the background you can see stars, which later on, I'm not gonna go there right now because I don't want to lose a scene, but after the glitch happens and they go through the tunnel and they're going to see Kane's office, at the end of the tunnel when Jax is going through, it looks like there's a bunch of stars, and in Kane's office there's a bunch of star imagery. Of course, when you look up, there's a bunch of stars. There was the one stargazing episode, so is it important? I don't know, but I noticed it, so I'm saying it. Anyway, they touch, and it's interesting that, like, his gloves are pulled off when he goes to touch Ribbit. But this is not what I wanted to talk about for his abstraction. I mean, there's also like, you can see when you look at the imagery, like, you can see Ribbit's face, you can see Kaufmo's face. And I'm not sure if Jax's face is, like, somewhere in here, but that's also interesting. Also not the main point that I wanted to talk about. The main point that I wanted to talk about, because I'm not sure if I can see anything else here. Let me see if I can pause it at the exact right moment. There is a couple frames where it's visible, so I'm not worried about, like, here. Let's see. Okay. Do you see the background over here? This image is overlaid on something, I feel like. You see? It kind of looks like, if you look over here, like over here, it's almost like they could be dice, right? Or like they're little dots, like a machine, like a huge database. And the reason why this like sticks out to me so much too, it is because someone called out that in the reflections of the character's eyes, I'm not sure if you can see them here, but actually wait, I know you can see them. It's very obvious over here, like in these scenes, right? Let me see if I can find it. Like over here, you see like over here how it has like the reflection that doesn't really look like what they are looking at. Like there's a bunch of paintings, but the paintings, if you notice, are here. Oh, it happened for like a singular second. Here, they look like windows. So you'll notice though that like there's two rectangle shapes like this. Does that really reflect what the paintings look like? I feel like it reflects more what the scene with this looks like. Oh wait, I got out of it. Hold on. Let me. Okay, I might have to re-say some stuff. Okay, so we see this. So you see how these kind of look like almost like windows, two and then one above. And if you look over here, there's like two little things and one above, kind of similar to what it looks like over here. I think that the reflections in their eyes and whatever this is over here are probably referencing the same thing? Question mark. I have no clue. That's just something I noticed. Maybe it's bullshit, maybe it's not. I think it's very interesting though, that it all has to do, yeah, I think it's very interesting. A theory that I thought about a while ago, I don't think it's correct, but maybe it's worth talking about here just because it's interesting to think on. But something I was thinking about a while ago is like, what if abstraction is the way out of the circus? What if when you abstract, you that is the way out? Like maybe like you're pulled out of the circus after you abstract, right? And when you see the abstractions going crazy, that's not actually the people, right? I don't think this is true, but I do think it's interesting. I do think it's an interesting thought to dwell on, just because Jax here is like kind of abstracting and he sees what looks like could be the real world. So yeah, that's what I have to say about that. That's my whole thing on Jax's abstraction. That's the most important part that I wanted to talk about. And now I'm going to go crazy. I'm going to fully jump off the deep end. I'm going to be talking about colors. I'm trying to think of like a good way to like introduce this, but I think the best way to kind of start my point is by saying Pomni is red, blue, and yellow. The colors of her character are mostly red and blue, and there's also a little bit of yellow. Now, why I think that red and blue are very important to the story, and we can see that like in these scenes, right, where obviously the two choices are either red or blue. And when the screen comes on and it tells the characters their choices, the red button is the bad button and the blue button is the quote unquote good button, and the screen is blue and everything around them is kind of tinged blue. Now, I will say that the wording on these, this is probably like, I don't know if this means anything, but the wording on these two options are: the red button will close the console and keep all the players inside. The blue button will end the game and disconnect all players. For the red option, I think it's worth noting that the wording is not saying that they can't get out of the circus, right? It doesn't say if you press the red button, you will never be able to leave. It just says the red button will close the console and keep all players inside the circus. It will close this computer, which also, in my mind, kind of means they can turn it on again. So if they want the option to leave, they can turn it on again and pick again later on, right? So it's not something that's like, it's not like they press the red button and all of a sudden they're stuck for the rest of their lives. However, this scene, so it says the options. You can see the checkerboard pattern at the sorry, I was pointing at the screen. So you can see the checkerboard pattern over here, which I feel like indicates some sort of black and whiteness, right? So there's two colors. However, as we go on in the scene, right, it's clearly kind of saying like, oh, blue is the right option. Everything's blue. The screen is blue. Everything around them is blue because the screen is blue and it's casting a blue light. However, as we go on in the scene, I feel like, and this could be a little bit crazy of me, but when you look at the characters who have yellow in their like clothes and like in the different parts of their character design, like, to me it really sticks out. I could be crazy for this one. I could be absolutely insane, but like, look at how the yellow sticks out in comparison to the red and the blue. Look at Jax's eyes over here. Look at Zubal's hand. It's like the yellow is like popping out. Right? And listen, this is why I was saying that like maybe I am the crazy one, because I feel like this is all hinting towards a third option. I'm going to say something absolutely insane over here, but look at the buttons and look at Pomni's gloves. Right? It's designed in a way where if she were to turn around, the red button is on the blue and the blue is on the red, right? It's opposite. And it's kind of like wrong in a way because it's not like lined up. But when she turns around, it is lined up. And when she turns around, when you turn around in this room, what do you see but a door? And we'll see. Yes, bad view, but like you see the door, right, when they turn around. And earlier on in the episode, there was the plot line of, they wanted to get keys for the Chinese room, but it turns out that they didn't need a key in the first place. It was already open. And I feel like this all ties in. These three colors tie in. The theme of there being three colors ties in with just the fact that there's usually three options for them, right? So let me go on my tirade. The two examples of there being three options that I wanted to focus on was in this episode, right? Because on the surface, it really seems like there's only two options for them. They either bring the truck back to the villains or they take the truck back to the kingdom, right? Those are their two options. However, because Pomni is there and something weird happens, the truck glitches and there ends up being two trucks. So it's like a secret third option that ends up happening for them, right? And then in this episode, I think that this episode is actually a really great example of what I'm trying to say, and what I'm trying to convey. So this part, you can see that Pomni has three options. She can either clip the blue one, clip the red one, or she can clip the green one, right? Which I think is really interesting because it's another theme of like 3. And then later on in the episode, I already like kind of said this, but like there's 2 eyes in the intermission scene, and then Bubble is in the middle. So kind of like more of like that theme 3, but I just think it's interesting how there seems to be 3 options at some places. Now, the other thing that I want to say about this scene from the same episode is this. So in this scene, when she's going down to see the fish, I think one thing that sticks out to me is that the lighting is also blue, just like it is in this later scene. It's a lighter blue, but it's like, it's still blue. And then when she goes down to see the fish that gives her the answer, or the fish that is like telling her the truth, is yellow, right? Now, I know that this whole fish scene is like kind of like, it feels like a joke. It kind of feels like it's thrown in here as a joke. So like, bear with me. So when she goes down and she sees this other fish, it's a red fish that says, "I'm the one that tells lies," which I think is interesting. I also think it's interesting that the 2 fish colors are red and yellow rather than red and blue. Although I maybe it's just that they didn't want to. Maybe it can mean nothing. There is a chance that like none of this matters. However, the other thing about this scene is that they go up to a treasure chest and the lid is open, and he's upset about like his entire life savings being stolen. I don't know. But the other thing is that the padlock is locked. So I'm not sure what this entails or what it means, but like it's just something I noticed that I think like could be important. It could mean something, it could not. I really don't know. I think that honestly the most important thing I think about this scene is that there's 2 fish. One of them seems to be like a red fish. It kind of seems like almost purplish, which I don't know, that's kind of like up to you. I think it is supposed to be red, but it could also like be more blue. I have no clue. But I do think that one of the fish is red purplish color and is saying that it tells lies, while there's another fish down here that is yellow and is like giving the quest, is upset about their treasure being like stolen. I think that this scene is a funny bit, and I do think that it was put in here to be funny. However, I also think that this scene goes on for too long for it to be not important in some way, is my opinion. And I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It's whatever. But yeah. So that, and the other thing, I think the last thing that I want to talk about is I just want to go back to the scene where she's running through. So one thing that I noticed that I think is important, honestly, I was going through this scene and there was hold on, there was this yellow caution sign, and I was like, the caution sign is yellow, guys. And I had to take a moment and be like, girl, the caution sign is yellow. Yeah, it's yellow because that's the color the caution signs usually are. So I may or may not be going a little bit insane, but I think it's perhaps worth noting that on either side of the door it says exit. It kind of makes me wonder, how on what that means, because both sides of the door say exit. So it kind of like, which way is the exit? Where is the exit? It's kind of like both sides are the exit. Wherever you go is the exit kind of thing. I think that there seems to be a theme, to me at least, that the exit is a lot easier to go through than they realize, just because oh yeah, this is, sorry, I just forgot earlier in the scene when Kinger is like, how are we gonna get out of here, and Zubul says, it's right there, the exit is right there, you just have to turn around and look. And I mean, I guess Kinger is technically already turned around, but the other two, I think it's worth noting that like the scene, what we're told to be staring at is the Gloink Queen being obliterated by abstracted Kaufmo, and they're asking, and like Kinger is asking, where is the exit, and Zubul is looking the other way and says, the exit's right over there. And so that's why I think that this part over here with Pomni like looking at the door and like looking behind her at the door is kind of important. And then also like with the Chinese room, they're trying out all these keys and trying to see like, how are we going to get into this room? But it turns out that they could have just gone in all the entire time. It wasn't locked. And then the treasure chest being open, despite it like the lock being closed, I feel like also plays into this theme of like, you're asking where the exit is, you're asking what is going on, but it was kind of, you just had to turn around and look at it. So yeah, that's the end of my rant. That is the end of my rant. I think I got everything off my chest that I wanted to get off my chest. I feel a bit lighter now. I do. After being absolutely insane, I think the last note I'll make is that the colors are on Pomni are red, blue, and yellow. However, there seems to be the color green that makes its way in a lot of these scenes. Like right now, if you look at Pomni, her yellow parts almost have a green tinge to them because of the lighting, the blue lighting. That is just an extra note. I have no clue what that means. I'm done for today. I'm gonna try to not be crazy for like 2 seconds, and then maybe I'll come back and say more. I don't think, like, this wasn't really a theory video. This is me just rambling, honestly. There was no theories in this. I guess the big theory that I had going on was like that the exit is a lot easier to find than they probably realize. But other than that, it wasn't really any theories. It was kind of just me rambling. But I hope maybe this made you think more about some of the things in the digital circus. Oh, wait, that's right. One more thing before I go is that, sorry, I just remembered this. Okay, over here, the hot dog thing. If we go to the fast food masquerade and we look at the menu, my friend pointed this out, not me, so I actually don't know like where you can see it. Like if we go over here, you can see that the hot dog actually costs $57.57, which is also like, that's the length of the trailer for episode 7. So there's obviously something going on with this number and the hot dog and the NPC. That's also why I think that the NPC is probably more important than we realize. There's something going on that I have no clue about, and I just thought it was neat. I thought it was a nice little callback, if you will. But yeah, that's the end. Hope you liked the video. I'm gonna take a chill pill, I think. So yeah, goodbye.